You're having a good time on the couch with your friends. You're having a good time in the bed alone. You're having a good time watching TV. Let us ruin your day. Yay!
Welcome to Now It's Ruined, the podcast for people who hate enjoying things. I'm Kate Bridle.
And I'm Larkin Harrington.
And today we're going to be ruining something that Larkin doesn't know what it is yet, so I'm not going to say right off the bat. First, we are going to do some housekeeping. And I want to say, I know that sometimes we get a little rambly at the beginning of episodes and we don't get into the meat of it for a minute. I always try to edit it so that it's like less than 5 minutes until we get into the actual episode. But this might be a little longer. It's not really housekeeping so much as directing your attention to other stuff that I think you will like. And then some fun updates that we have. So first, I have some corrections to issue. In our last episode on emus, I mistakenly thought that rhea birds and ñandú, which is the Spanish name for them, are different. They're not. I'd only ever heard these birds referred to as ñandú by my mom. Yeah. And so I didn't realize that they were just rheas. They are.
Oh, they're just rhea birds.
I also wanted to say that in our bonus content thing, which turned out to be basically a full-length bonus episode that we're giving you for free, that's us talking about sinners, I repeatedly mispronounced Haley Steinfeld's name. I kept calling her Stanfeld. Haley Stanfeld. Oh. Sorry, Haley Steinfeld. Next, Jake Lacey slid into my DMs on Instagram.
Incredible news, you guys.
So I shouldn't say slid into my DMs. That makes it sound so skeezy. Like,
oh, yeah, that's a little...
Could not have been kinder or more polite. He was really nice. We had tagged him in the story on Instagram with the clip of us boycotting him. We saw that he saw the story and realized the clip cuts off after Larkin's like negative definition of boycotting. And we were like, what if Jake Lacey thinks we're insulting him and he hates us now? So we
No, this can't happen.
So we panic posted this like second story that we're like, oh God, he saw, like, please don't hate us. It's positive, we promise. And he messaged me and he was like, I should have said, like, I understood it. I'm flattered. Thank you. And then he gave me permission to post it. And he messaged me a couple of times. He was really nice.
Boycott validated.
Approved. Also, we made boycotting calling out men specifically because men are so consistently disappointing as a group. So we get very excited when they're not. But really, you can boycott anybody. We're not trying to be uninclusive. Okay, speaking of boycotting, I felt like my boycott of Michael B. Jordan on the Sinners bonus content was woefully inadequate because in 2018, he became the first major actor to adopt an inclusion rider for his company, which is something that requires filmmakers to meet diversity benchmarks in like their cast and crew. So it's like you have to hire women, LGBTQ folks with disabilities, racial diversity, like all of that is included in it, which is really, really cool. And he prompted a bunch of other major stars to follow suit. So he started an amazing trend of inclusion writers in Hollywood.
Dang.
Hot boy doing hot boy shit. And I wanted to give him a more enthusiastic boycott to Michael B. Jordan.
Thank you.
Finally. Kind of a boycott, but also just wanting to direct people's attention to someone cool we think you would all like. So the comedian Wyatt Cenac has a podcast that he did a pilot for a while back that he's now trying to get going again, and it's called Everything is Racist. And if you're not familiar with Wyatt Cenac, you actually probably are because he's worked on a ton of really big stuff. He was a correspondent on The Daily Show. He had his own show on HBO for a while. He wrote for King of the Hill, and he's done guest voices on King of the Hill and Archer and Bob's Burgers and like a tons of stuff. He's really brilliant. He's really funny. And we also happen to know he's really kind because last year I cold emailed him about a writing project that I was doing, and he suggested some really great people that I should connect with to help me in like my writing journey, and it was really nice of him. We emailed back and forth like 1 or 2 times after that, not a major interaction, but like he was really kind, so he's a gem. So in Everything is Racist, he dives into how everyday things are tied to race. So very much like what we do here, except exclusively about race. And the pilot that he did was about Lego, which was really interesting. He just did kind of a relaunch of it by doing it as a live show, the Lego one. And so he hasn't officially like launched it as a podcast again yet, but I just want to turn people onto him and encourage you to go follow him for when he does, because if you like our show, you will definitely like that one, because it's done by someone smarter and funnier with better resources than us. So. And yes, we have asked him to be on this show, and no, we have not heard back from him.
Fair. Very fair.
Just totally fine. Yes, no ill will whatsoever. But maybe if we get a little bigger, we can like, and he gets Everything is Racist going again, we can maybe pitch like a crossover episode or something. That could be fun. If you follow him, maybe tell him we sent you. Okay. Larkin.
Yes.
You kind of know the direction I'm planning to go with this episode, but you don't know the object, and it's not really one that's easy to do a little like intro conversation like we usually do, like, have you ever used a chainsaw? So I'm just going to ask a weird question, which is, how do you feel about road signs?
I mean, I guess I don't have feelings.
Nor should you. I don't know why I asked how you feel. Like, it's a weird question.
It's a great question. Now I'm having a moment where I'm like, well, I guess I do like them. I like to read all of them. We were moving you once, and there was the food gas hospital.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's right. Because we had just been talking about going to Taco Bell.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like obviously supposed to be the list of things that were in that direction, food, gas, and hospital, but they didn't put any commas. So it just said food, gas, hospital.
Which, I mean, maybe that should be something that exists for Taco Bell exclusively. Or
They should have one in the back of every Taco Bell, a food, gas, hospital. I would go to Taco Bell for medical care. I don't know why. I feel safe with that, but I would. I trust them.
What a wild thing to say. But yeah, I think I like road signs.
Great, let me ruin them for you.
Okay.
So road signs are hard to miss in everyday life. We use them in our neighborhoods all the time, and then there are the big, massive signs on the highway that you really can't miss because they're so huge. But have you ever wondered who makes them?
Frankly, no. I can't say that I have.
I had never thought about it until Nate and I were driving back from San Diego Comic-Con recently, and he asked about it. He was like, who makes them? And so I looked it up, and that inspired this whole episode. So thanks, honey. In Europe and other parts of the world, road signs are manufactured by various companies, which makes sense. Here in the US, there's some of that, but the signs are expensive to manufacture and they don't really give you any profit. So the folks who need them have found a dirt cheap alternative: prison labor.
Yep. God damn it. Fuck.
Yep. Today I finally get to talk about the prison industrial complex. So I do want to issue a trigger warning for prison and race-related trauma and violence. I'm not going to be able to cover all the many issues with the U.S. prison system in the time I have, but I'll hit a few of them. I have some experience with prisons and jails. My second summer of law school, I interned with Prisoners Legal Services of New York, which is a really, really great organization in New York State that advocates on behalf of indigent incarcerated individuals. And they were formed as a result of the Attica uprising in 1971. And during my time there, I did a lot of work like overturning disciplinary actions. I advocated for medical care, things like that. I have only visited 2 prisons, Elmira and Auburn. They're both maximum security facilities, but we served a bunch of other prisons in the area in upstate New York as well. So I heard stories from a lot of different prisons. I had clients all over. And I was only there for 1 summer, so I don't want to like overblow my experience, but I really loved it. I have significantly more experience with jails. Before I passed the bar exam in California, I was working as a law clerk at the Ventura County Public Defender's Office, and I was in jails every morning for several hours at a time, interviewing several people every single day. I just wanted to say all that so that, you know, people don't think I'm just talking out of my ass with some of the stuff that I am talking about. Nowhere near the amount of experience that other people have, and certainly is not lived experience with being incarcerated, but it's not no experience. I just wanted to throw it out.
And I was thinking about this morning because, as you know, I've been dealing with imposter syndrome a lot because I keep getting stuck in a rut of like, well, we don't know what we're talking about. And it's like, but we're learning with our listeners, which I think is a different take. And there's so many podcasts with a bunch of white dudes sitting on a couch talking about things they have no business talking about, and also speaking from a place of just outlandish confidence, you know, like we're not doing that. And we're learning in time with you guys as you're listening.
Back to road signs. They are very much not alone in the category of items made by prison labor here in the United States. Prisoners make motor oil, prescription glasses, air fresheners, hand soap, and picnic tables, just to name a few things. We're going to focus on road signs because they were the inspiration for this episode. So before going any further, I want to shout out Zachary Crockett, a journalist who does a podcast called The Economics of Everyday Things over at Freakonomics.com. He did a really excellent episode about road signs and prison labor, and it's so excellent, actually, that I was really mad when I found it because it's basically like the exact outline of what I had already thought that I wanted to talk about. But I have managed to differentiate this episode from that episode, and I will link it in the show notes. And I just wanted to give Zachary Crockett credit because he did a really great breakdown. So first I want to talk a little bit about the history of road signs in the United States, because if you've traveled internationally, you may notice that we're a little unique in our signage. Our signs are very text-based, which many other places you go, that's not the case. Road signs are usually picture-based and relatively universal. So Europe,
I
Japan.
hadn't thought about that. And it's true.
Yeah, image-based, which makes sense because, you don't need to know the language to understand
Right.
the sign. The first practical modern car was invented in Germany in 1888 by Carl Benz, who, yes, his company eventually became Mercedes-Benz. But mass production of cars first happened in America thanks to world-renowned anti-Semite Henry Ford. As we all probably learned in history class, though, Ford did invent the moving assembly line, which made mass production of vehicles possible. And so car production exploded, particularly in Detroit, where the Ford plant was based. And the mass availability of cars meant we needed more roads. And as these roads were built and people started driving more, it was obvious that signage was needed so people could figure out what the fuck they were doing and where they were going. And early road signs were actually the responsibility of like local governments or private automobile clubs for specific areas. So they were totally decentralized. There was no standard at all. They were like hand painted. They were made from different materials. So you didn't even know what to look out for. So as people started traveling further and further in cars, they were getting more and more confused. So it wasn't good. So it was clear that we needed some standardization. And in 1927, the American Association of State High Officials put together a compendium to attempt to make signage more uniform. Except 3 years later in 1930, another organization put together a different manual. And so now there were two different methods of standardization, which really isn't standardization at all. But in 1931, they all got their shit together and they just made a single manual, the Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices, or MUTCD.
Real page turner.
I did not look at it. I wish I had, but I didn't. It's the source of many of our modern signs, like stop signs, railroad crossings, all of that fun stuff. So in 1951, the United Nations was formed, and they came up with a global standard for road signs, which was image-based. Because, like we said, that makes sense. But the US tried these universal road signs in a few places, and people fucking hated them. For one thing, after the end of World War II, there was a lot of anti-European aggression.
Oh, God. Okay.
Yeah. So people were like, don't let the Europeans tell us what to do. They can't get their shit together. They've started two massive wars in the last couple of decades. Like, they can't.
You don't get to tell me what to do.
And then people were also just confused by stuff changing from text to pictures. And so we wound up not opting into the Vienna Convention, which is where they standardized road signs for 69 countries. I literally, in parentheses, I have he after that. 69. The MUTCD made one more try with image-based signs in 1970, but it didn't go well again. People got insanely confused because suddenly all the signs were images that they had never seen before, and they were like, I don't know what that means, and it just caused a lot of chaos. So we rolled it back. Yeah.
And Americans were so just like, no, keep it this, just like stop changing things.
So if you want to learn more about the types of signs, colors of signage, all that fun stuff, go listen to Zachary's episode on Freakonomics. I thought about getting into it here, but I don't want to use my time on that. I want to get more depressing.
Let's take it to a darker place.
Yes, always. So a good chunk of smaller signs like street signs, stop signs and stuff are made by companies because they're easier to manufacture because they're small. But big signs like the ones on highways are way more expensive to produce. So those primarily fall to prisoners to manufacture. But prisoners do also make smaller signs. So think of this every time you see any sign.
Gee whiz. Okay.
Gee whiz. What a tame reaction to the prison industrial complex. Nuts. Raleigh, North Carolina is home to one of the largest producers of highway signs. Actually, I think it's a smaller town called Bunn that this place is actually in, but it's in North Carolina. Franklin Correctional Center is the name of the place. And Franklin is a medium security prison that houses a sign plant on its grounds, but the plant is actually owned by another entity, Correction Enterprises, a name that makes me want to punch everything.
I don't care for that.
It feels so dystopian.
Yeah.
So Correction Enterprises' stated mission is, quote, to provide marketable job skills and transitional opportunities for offenders in a professional and safe work environment while providing quality goods and excellent service to our customers at a savings to the citizens of North Carolina.
Oh, get fucked.
Yeah. And their website is equally infuriating to me. They have product categories like gift ideas and office furniture. Mm-hmm. Yeah. All made by prisoners.
Kate, we are in a dystopia. Why?
I know.
Is this...
Oh, and more we're in a dystopia.
Oh,
I
it's
mean,
just like
Pete
every
Hegseth
day.
doesn't think women should vote and thinks we should ban gay sex. And you're like...
They're backing up on gay marriage.
They're burning loads of birth control pills. Yeah, Kim fucking Davis is back in our news feeds.
Well,
I got the most amazing message from one of my followers who's trans. They're hilarious. They said, what's almost crazier is that in all these years, no one has had the decency to tell her to change up her fuck-ass haircut. But I guess that's what not hanging out with gay people gets you.
I adore that. Anyway, is this facility a larger facility than most? Is that why it's...
Not to my knowledge, but
just-
maybe
it's just what
I mean, lots of
happened.
prisons are huge.
It's just where they happened to land. Oh my God.
Yeah. So ostensibly, companies like Correction Enterprises, which is not unique at all, every state has their own version of it. They are ostensibly doing their part for the prisoners by teaching them skills that will help them get jobs when they're released. But essentially, it's just a means for them to use slave labor to make products and save money. And if you want to use a typical business to produce something, about 25 to 35% of your cost is going to be labor. At Correction Enterprises, the labor cost is only about 2.5%. Because they're only paying their workers a few cents an hour.
But I mean, that's why the prison industrial complex was created.
Yep. If you think prisoners don't need more than a few cents an hour because, you know, they're getting 3 hots and a cot, what do they need to pay for? It's actually not that cheap to be imprisoned if you want to live like a human being. And commissary items like shampoo or a can of Coke, you know, cost a couple or a few bucks each. And many prisoners also have to pay for phone calls to communicate with their friends and family. So if you want to wash yourself or talk to your family, it costs more than a few cents an hour will get you. You know, when you make $14 a week, $1.50 for a can of Coke is unreasonable. You're not going to do that. And, you know, people might be out there like, well, they're criminals and they should have thought about it. But like, there are a lot of innocent people in prison, A. B.
They're human beings.
Yes, committing a crime doesn't make you not a human being. And
Right.
like, Coke can make the difference between whether or not you lose your fucking mind on
Or
a really rough
cigarette,
day.
like just one.
Oh, tampons?
Tampons?
Like I said, shampoo, soap, like stuff like that. Like some is standard, but it's usually really shitty. And if you want like decent products, you've got to pay for it. So as I said, far from just a North Carolina problem, all but 8 states use forced labor in prisons, and they've all got their own brand of correction enterprises. The 8 states that have banned forced prison labor are Colorado, they were the first, Nebraska, Utah, Alabama, interestingly, Oregon, Tennessee, Vermont, and most recently Nevada. I voted on that referendum. I'd forgotten about it until I did this. So they have ostensibly banned it, right? But at least in Colorado, there has been basically no meaningful change within prisons. The law is on the books, but they haven't actually done anything to like stop prison
Nothing
labor.
is implemented. Right. It's just to make them look better. Okay. Well, everything's bad.
Before I go further into this issue of forced labor in prisons, I want to go into the history of prisons in general. And to set that up a little bit, I want to take a quick second to talk about the purposes of punishment that we are taught in law school. The first one is deterrence, prevent future crime by discouraging people from committing crime.
Sure.
Second is incapacitation, preventing future crime by containing and incapacitating offenders. And obviously the ultimate form of incapacitation is the death penalty. Rehabilitation, so preventing future crime by reforming offenders. Restitution, which is focused on repairing harm for the victims of crime. So it's not about preventing future crime. It's just about repairing the harm that was done. And finally, retribution, which is just punishment for punishment's sake. You did something wrong. We don't care if it reforms you. You just need to be punished, and punished in proportion to the crime you committed, regardless of your past criminal history or anything there. So those last two aren't really about preventing future crime. It's just focused on like making it right, so to speak.
Right.
Different legal systems focus on different purposes of punishment and prioritize different purposes of punishment. So here in the US, we are big on retribution. In other areas like Scandinavia, they focus on rehabilitation. So the purpose of punishment that a system values most affects how that system is run. You can value multiple purposes. You know, you can want to deter and rehabilitate, but generally systems can be broken into those that favor rehabilitation like Scandinavia and those that favor retribution and or incapacitation like the US.
That makes sense.
So historically around the world, we've always had a means of punishing people we felt needed to be punished. Torture, execution, hard labor, all that fun stuff. And we've needed places to hold people while they're waiting to be punished. But a lot of the time, the imprisonment itself wasn't the punishment. It was just like where we put you while we figure out how we're going to punish you, right?
Right.
So the Romans were the first to use prison as a punishment. The oldest prison in Rome was established around 640 BC, and it was in the sewers below Rome, which were still actively being used as sewers, which meant it was a really pleasant place to be incarcerated. You had human waste all around you.
Oh my God.
And the Romans used their prisoners as a slave labor force to complete public works projects that required hard labor. This included various ergastula, which were Roman workhouses that were attached to many Roman farms. And the slaves in these workhouses were kept in cramped conditions, and they were forced to do agricultural work while chained the whole time. They were chained in the fields, they were chained to benches, the origin of the chain gang, pretty much.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So in the Middle Ages in Europe, folks were kept in dungeons of castles, as I said, fortresses, and were also forced to like row ships in chains. And of course, for a long time, one of our favorite forms of punishment was public torture and public execution. So people would gather in the town square to watch their fellow humans be hanged, burned, beheaded, drawn and quartered, eviscerated like William Wallace and Braveheart. Spoiler alert, sorry. All that fun stuff.
Yeah, what a fun time. Take the family.
Take your kids.
Get a snack.
Watch your neighbor get beheaded over some bullshit.
You know, today I want to see some good viscera. I'd love a good evisceration. I've had a rough week, you know?
Just perk me up to see someone from my town be eviscerated publicly or pulled apart by horses. Poor horses being made to take part in such a thing. Like,
What's your job? Like, I pull a cart and it's like, it pans over to like, you know.
Horse with a cigarette hanging out of its mouth and like a 1,000-yard stare.
Yes. Don't talk to him.
Don't talk to Maurice. He's not doing well. These public displays of pain and death started falling out of favor in the US and Europe in the late 17th century and throughout the 18th century because people were being sentenced to these horrendous fates for petty crimes, and jurors started to refuse to sentence people on petty crimes if they knew that death was on the table. They were like, he stole a loaf of bread to feed his family, Jean Valjean style. We're not going to be doing that.
At least there's some humanity that remained. There always is. I have to remind myself.
And so this mass resistance caused rulers to start rethinking their punishment schemes in order to not be seen as tyrants and maybe facing a rebellion. There was a lot of that going around
A lot of that. It was a fad at the time.
So the obvious solution was mass incarceration and forced labor. Prior to the 18th century, mass incarceration took place in jails and workhouses, which some scholars qualify as the first prisons, but other scholars argue they're just not the same system as how we would define prisons now, and I am inclined to agree with those scholars. Among those scholars is sociologist Ashley Rubin, who says they were more about shorter-term confinement and punishment. She defines the concept of the modern prison as, quote, a place designated for punishment of people who have been convicted of typically serious offenses, and their punishment is long-term confinement, usually more than a year. So that's her definition of prison, and I think that's a pretty good one. So, Larkin, if you had to guess, which country do you think invented modern prisons as defined by Ashley Rubin?
Ooh. I'm going to go with France.
It's a very strong guess. It was the United States.
Okay, you know what? That was my first instinct. No, of course it was. Of course it was because, yeah, okay, KKK. Yep.
So irritated.
So irritated with myself. I thought I was being so smart and knowledgeable. No,
France is what I probably would have guessed if you put me in the same position. Yes. The first modern prison was established in Massachusetts in 1785, just after the American Revolution. So one of the first things we did as a country was establish the modern prison system. Hooray!
God damn it. It's just like the disappointing child. You have a couple good ones, and then you're like looking over here at you, USA. Why do you always disappoint me? You have everything. I gave you everything. I raised you, just fucking up everybody's day and building prison industrial complexes first out the gate. You leave the house and this is what you do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and actually the first 3 state prisons in the whole world were all established in the United States: Massachusetts, Connecticut, and Pennsylvania. Public sentiment against public executions was not the only rationale for establishing prison as a punishment. There is a concern among officials that public executions would give people the bloodlust and make them want to kill people themselves.
Oh.
Which it feels like the 1700s equivalent of blaming violent video games for violent crime, but maybe has a more rational tie to the issue, I guess.
A little bit more rational.
Taking little kids to see people get eviscerated when they're that's how you make a psycho. Yeah.
These kids are listening to Marilyn Manson. I mean,
fuck Marilyn Manson, by the way.
Right.
So advocates for the prison system were like, if we lock people away from their friends and family forever, that is a way better deterrent. Especially if we make prisons horrible places to be. People will hear horror stories and they'll think, well, I don't want to do that.
I don't want to go to there.
And there were also some rehabilitative ideas around the establishment of modern prisons. There were arguments made that it's you take someone out of the environment that made them a criminal, maybe it lets them disconnect from that and reform themselves. And then there was also this idea that forcing prisoners to work would teach them discipline. So forced labor was part of the American prison system from the jump. Since the US invented the modern prison, it is unsurprising that we account for a disproportionate amount of the world's prison population. According to the ACLU, despite making up only 5% of the global population, the United States is home to more than 20% of the entire world's prison population.
Good Lord. And I
20%.
knew that in the back of my mind, but every time I hear that statistic, it's are you actually joking my ass? That is insane.
Yeah. So as an entire country, we make up 5% of the world population, but we have 20% of the world's prisoners in our prisons. We spend $80 billion on incarceration each year. And like everything in our country, race plays a big role in who we imprison. 1 out of every 3 Black boys born in the US today can expect to go to prison at some point in their lives. 1 in 3, compare that to 1 in 17 white boys. This is despite the fact that Black people only make up about 13% of our population. So that representation is disproportionate. And before anybody fucking says it, the reason is not because Black men commit more crimes than white men. Don't even
say
that.
I will find you if you say that.
Anyone who tells you that, you should retort that there is no real way to know how much crime is committed by any race, because crime statistics only show the people who get caught. And American police, who are literally based on slave patrols of the 1700s, they are far more likely to use things like pretextual stops and stop and frisk techniques against Black men than white men. So, of course, Black men are going to be more likely to be caught if they are carrying something that they shouldn't have or whatever it might be. So for those who don't know, pretextual stops are things like pulling someone over for not fully stopping at a stop sign, but really you want to pull them over because you want to search their car. You want to get a better look at them. And usually this happens to a car with a Black man in it.
Yeah, guess who gets pulled over? And if you want to fight me on it, I'll give you my home address.
Oh my God. Pretextual stops were actually declared legal under the 4th Amendment in United States v. Wren, which was a Supreme Court case from 1996, and they are used against non-white drivers more than white drivers per a study conducted by none other than the Stanford Law Review. Thank you very much. Similarly, stop and frisk, aka Terry stops, are used particularly by the New York Police Department. They allow police officers to stop and quickly search an individual for weapons if they think there may be a danger to themselves or others. And the reasonableness of this assumption goes pretty generously toward the police. The courts perceive it pretty liberally. They're like, well, he's an experienced street cop. So with merely a visual pat down, as they say in Always Sunny,
right?
He could clearly tell that someone's a threat or not. His instincts, like his gut. I remember reading these cases in law school and being absolutely fucking furious because they literally are just like, well, his gut said maybe this guy was shady, so that's enough for me.
No other criteria necessary. He's been on the streets. He knows.
And again, I am the daughter of a cop. Don't come at me.
Fight both of us.
Fight my dad. You can't. He's dead. Stop and frisk, Terry stops are also used more against non-white people than against white people by a statistically significant amount. And when they stop and frisk people, they can find all sorts of things that might cause them to arrest you or give them reasonable cause to do a further search. And so they stop you by claiming they think you could have a weapon. They search you, they find some weed, and off you go to jail. Speaking of weed, Black people are also disproportionately arrested for drug crimes, including marijuana crimes, since the war on drugs started in the 70s. Larkin, you just look like you might need to say
somebody said the most amazing thing recently, because I know these arrests are still happening, but they said since weed dispensaries are now more and more looking like Mac shops, I feel like there are a bunch of incarcerated people who have done their due, right? Like they can go now, right? And
yes.
I mean, say less.
Yep. And actually, it's funny you should say that, because this is my boy cat. And guess who I'm going to boycott right now on this issue?
Oh, I needed that. I'm really sweaty and hot and mad. So just seeing that little sticker.
I'm holding up the Colin Hanks jar because I'm going to boycott Colin Hanks. So he did an interview with Forbes where he was talking about selling Hanks kerchiefs, which are his now defunct, sadly, line of kerchiefs that he sold.
Sad.
And he was partnering with a guy that he knew who ran a dispensary, and he was like, oh, sell my kerchiefs in the dispensaries. He said of marijuana use, quote, "To me, it's just such a non-issue. I'm just so glad that we've somehow been able to collectively get over it. And as soon as the people that have been in prison for far too long for these things can be let go, we'll be able to move on with the conversation."
Ugh. Hot boys doing hot boy shit.
Boycotted. I'm going to give Colin Hanks 50 cents for that.
Wow. Go off, King.
So as you alluded to, a lot of states have passed reforms on this front and have released people convicted solely for marijuana use or possession. They've also enacted methods to expunge some of those convictions. Unfortunately, though, Black people are still disproportionately represented in marijuana-related arrests. It was really hard to find current stats on this, actually, on like drug conviction rates by race. But I did find a study by two awesome grad students at Princeton, Mustafa Ali Smith and Kiana West. So the article uses Chicago and Indianapolis as examples to represent the larger U.S. Both areas passed reforms that legalized and decriminalized marijuana use. And the study found that racial disparities in both cities did decrease immediately after the reforms were passed, but then actually went back up.
Okay.
In Chicago, the disparity rates went back up to the pre-reform levels, and in Indianapolis, the disparity actually got worse than it was before the reform. The racial disparities in our criminal justice system aren't happenstance. They're not coincidence. They are directly tied to America's shameful and horrific history of slavery. And I want to take this opportunity to say that if you have not watched the incredibly powerful documentary that Ava DuVernay made in 2016, The 13th, stop listening to this podcast and go watch that. If you only have time to do one thing, go watch The 13th. It's so good. It is deeply upsetting, but really, I think, necessary viewing.
Yeah, stop listening to us. Go watch The 13th.
And then please come back and finish.
Yeah, come back.
So The 13th outlines what I'm about to discuss, how the 13th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution was supposed to abolish slavery in the United States, but actually allows it to continue. The 13th Amendment was ratified December 6, 1865. It states, "Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as punishment for crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist in the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction." So you'll notice, slips a nice little exception into the abolition of slavery. You can make people slaves if they've been convicted of a crime. Any crime. I'm going to say that again. You can be legally made a slave in the United States if you have been convicted of any crime that is in our Constitution. And what do you suppose this motivated people to do with Black people in the South who had just been freed from slavery? Convict them of petty crimes, send them to jail, and keep using them as slaves. Enter Jim Crow. Jim Crow actually was a character in a minstrel show, and if you don't know what minstrel shows were, they were super racist shows where white people would put on blackface and play these incredibly racist caricatures of Black people. It's actually unclear how this character became shorthand for these laws. People kind of don't know the origin of that. But if you say Jim Crow in this country, most people are going to know that you're talking about this era in the South post-Civil War to the 60s. Now, this isn't to say that the North wasn't being racist as fuck, because they definitely were. Sundown towns, which were exclusively white towns where Black families were on the whole not allowed to live, those sundown towns existed throughout the United States. The reason they were called sundown towns is because Black people were allowed to be there to pass through or do work during the day, but there were signs directing them to be out of the town by sunset. And if you were a Black person unfortunate enough to be caught there after sunset, you risked violence and death. Sundown towns were not just directed at Black people, by the way. There were also sundown towns that targeted Native people, Latinos, Asians, Jews, and Catholics. And this actually hit me thinking back on our talk about sinners, because at one point you mentioned that the Native folks who show up at the beginning are like, we've got to go because the sun is setting. And I have no idea if this was intentional at all on Ryan Coogler's part.
Yeah.
But the sundown's signaling the start of this violence.
Of the violence.
Like that transition from daytime when you're maybe kind of safe on the streets, but then nighttime is when the white people just go crazy and they're going to get you.
Oh, I didn't even put that together.
I hadn't either until this moment. And as I said, I don't like Ryan Coogler said, there's a lot of allegory people are like putting on the movie that
for sure
wasn't intentional.
Beauty of the art, right? But like,
yes, also
that is oof.
Yeah, sun goes down, no more Mr. Nice White Guy, to the extent they were being nice in the first place, I guess.
Like, unfortunately, they're not burning in the sun.
Yeah, if only. But the North didn't formalize their racism with laws in the same way that the South did. Obviously, the South did not want to give up slavery. They fought a whole fucking war about it, no matter what people say. And they weren't going to let that exception in the Constitution go to waste. So Jim Crow laws essentially criminalized being Black in the South. They included curfews for Black people. They kept them out of certain jobs. They kept them from sitting at the front of buses, all the segregation shit. And if you violated these laws, you were convicted and sent to prison and used as slave labor. The people sent to prison under these laws were part of a system known as convict leasing, which was where they would be leased out to private businesses, including mines and, of course, plantations, as cheap or free labor. So the convict leasing system incentivized mass incarceration of Black people to maintain the slavery status quo in the South. So in 1898, the convict leasing system was banned. And that was bad news for plantations in the South, especially a massive one in Louisiana that had relied on convict leasing to work its 8,000 acres of fields. That plantation was named for the country from which most of its enslaved workers were stolen, Angola. To save the Angola plantation, the state of Louisiana purchased it in 1901 and used the grounds to establish the Louisiana State Penitentiary. And today the prison has expanded to encompass over 18,000 acres, mostly farmland. People incarcerated at the prison are paid a tiny amount, a few cents an hour, to work the same fields that were worked by enslaved people prior to abolition, and it is still referred to as Angola. There is also an excellent documentary about this. It's called The Farm, Angola, USA. A lot of the Angola prison staff actually live on the prison grounds, where they have access to tennis courts, a golf course, and a pool. Just wait. Some of the incarcerated population are made to fish, cook, and do repair work for the free men, which is what they call the Angola staff. 75% of the incarcerated men at Angola are Black. I could not find statistics on the race of prison workers, but if I had to make an educated guess based on my own experience in prisons, I would say they are probably majority white. So these are mostly Black men being forced to serve white families for little to no money. And 70% of the men in Angola are there serving life sentences, which means they will live out their lives as slaves in Louisiana. And yes, you can be a slave who is paid. Slavery is about whether or not you consent to the labor, not about money.
My stomach hurts.
Yeah, when I read that, I was putting it together, like was reading the statistics and then reading about that. And I was like, oh my God, okay, so this is just a plantation where Black people are serving white families.
It's just
as slaves.
Still exists under all of our sometimes well-meaning noses.
Mm-hmm.
And we just overlook it because they're criminals. They had an ounce of weed.
Or who knows? Yeah, life sentences for Black people get life sentences for and white people don't. Also a thing that happens. So federal prisoners are also required to work if medically able. People in federal facilities. It's not just a state problem. As I mentioned earlier, all but 8 states have some form of forced labor. Most states pay workers very little. The average is 13 to 50 cents an hour. 8 states don't have to pay incarcerated workers at all. Those states are Alabama, which is interesting because they banned forced labor now. I don't know how substantively, but just want to acknowledge that. Arkansas, Florida, Georgia, Mississippi, Oklahoma, South Carolina, and Texas. So,
If you had put me to a guess,
right.
all of those would have made it. I'm actually like, my stomach hurts.
It's
I don't feel well.
so infuriating. Everywhere in the United States, not just in the South, Black people are overrepresented in prison populations and in the lowest paid prison jobs. Not all states actually technically require prisoners to work, but those that don't strictly require it often penalize those who choose not to work with like loss of privileges.
Right.
And when I say privileges, again, I mean things like visits with your family and like phone calls and shampoo and shit. Basic necessities. Yeah.
Right.
And by the way, I do not mean to suggest that other non-white populations in the US are not also disproportionately represented in the prison system compared to white people. They definitely are. Native men and Latino men are also imprisoned at disproportionate rates. And of course, were and are also treated like shit in much of the country. Certainly in the Jim Crow South, they were. So I'm not trying to ignore
Certainly
other...
right now.
Oh, yeah, definitely. So I'm not trying to ignore other populations who have been treated poorly here, but we only have so much time, so my focus is on Black folks because of the tie between slavery and the 13th Amendment and prison labor. But with that said, I also do want to acknowledge that Native people were used as slaves in the Americas as well. I could only find statistics on the Americas in general and not the United States specifically, but it's estimated that between 2 and 5.5 million Native Americans were enslaved in the Americas alongside 12.5 million African slaves. And of course, there are so many other, missing and murdered Native women. If you've never heard about that, go do a lovely, depressing fucking deep dive on that issue. Stuff that you talked about a little bit, like on the Emu Wars episode about forced schooling and the stealing of children and all that. Yeah, horrible shit. But we will hopefully get into those horrible things on another episode. We definitely will get into some stuff for Indigenous Peoples Day. But I just wanted to acknowledge it because I didn't want it to sound like I'm like, and only Black people have this problem.
Right.
We're shitty to everybody who's not white. Okay, so finally, I want to look at prisons and prison labor in other parts of the world as well. So UK and Kenya, for example, also take advantage of prison labor for their economies. Whether or not Kenya would be doing that if they were never colonized by Europe is a question I don't have time to answer, but just I'm going to leave it hang. Even our progressive friends over in Scandinavia take some advantage of prison labor. So Danish prisoners under the Prison and Probation Service, which is like the more severe kind of one, enjoy the right and duty to work, meaning they are required to work for 37 hours per week. They are paid a little more an hour than our prisoners. The only source I could find for this was Reddit, so grain of salt, but apparently they're paid between €1.50 to 2.3 euro per hour. Euro and the dollar are roughly even right now, so it's about like $1.86 to $2.68 an hour, compared to 50 cents or 14 cents or nothing.
Even their heinous treatment of human beings is better than us.
And it is way better in many other aspects. Scandinavian prisons in general are run very, very differently from prisons here in the US because of their focus on rehabilitation, which I mentioned earlier. Several U.S. states have actually sent people to Scandinavia to study prisons there to try and make reforms. Like, I know they did that in Oregon. Tara Lawyer Harper is the associate director of an organization called Impact Justice, and she was imprisoned in California for 15 years, and then she got out, and now she's the associate director of this organization, which is amazing. She visited Norway and Finland. Some people are like, Finland's not Scandinavia. Sometimes it's considered part of it, and it's culturally Scandinavian, so I'm lumping them in. Sorry to any Finnish people who might be listening and are like, we're not Scandinavian. One of the most powerful things from Tara's article about her experience in Norway and Finland was her description of the prison guards there versus the United States. So she writes, I saw Scandinavian correctional officers had a different look in their eyes than their American counterparts. There was a softness I had never seen before. And I know that look. I saw it every time I went into a prison or a jail. It is aggressive. It was aggressive against me because they knew I was there to help prisoners. Sometimes it wasn't aggressive against me, and I saw the shift as soon as they were bringing one of my clients in. And the way they deal with them, their posture, their movement, the look in their eyes is all like, fucking try me. And it's scary. It really is.
Yeah.
It's terrifying to be looked at like that.
Yeah, and that's one of the saddest and scariest things. Like, I just took like the deepest like grounding breath when you read that quote, because the way that these guards look at these people is not in a human way.
Right.
And just given that slight amount of power over another human being, the way it shifts their psychology so quickly and so easily is just, and I try to like hold on to my faith in humanity and my belief in love and how we can actually help each other and be good. And then you just see how quick that happens in that one, experiment they did that they had to
Stanford
call
prison
off.
study.
Yeah. They were like, whoa, let's shut this down. What is that about our inherent nature that we can just look at another human being that way? But the fact that in Scandinavia, there is that gentleness and that understanding, it's just something about how and I'll go back, okay, America, the shitty child that just were raised so well to believe that anyone who's committed a crime is inherently bad, a bad actor.
They need to be thrown away.
Right. They shouldn't be taken back into society, and they should be treated like that. They should be.
Mm-hmm. They deserve it. It's
They
their
do.
own choices.
Right.
Always. And which is just not true.
It's not true. And
the case.
The wide disparity of what people have done to be incarcerated to begin with. And and
they're all being treated that way regardless.
I can't think about it or form coherent words because I get so hot about it. It's so wrong. Not even to go into the death penalty, which
that's a whole separate
time.
thing.
Oh,
and I
my
will
God.
say I have met some really kind prison guards in my experiences as well. Like, I don't want to say that exclusively they were all dicks who had that look in their eyes, but I would say a majority. That is the stance is one of like defensiveness and aggression right off.
Right, and who's
the
to
bat.
say that even like the kind, quote unquote, kind person that you saw that maybe 10 minutes later and they're just like treat a person like trash because they can. Because they looked at them funny or gave them attitude or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, and they do things like, so prison officials just have so much power. That's something I learned when I was doing disciplinary hearing work. Is the system for disciplinary hearings in prisons is, at least in New York, the guy who runs the prison is the guy who's basically the judge at disciplinary hearings, and a guard can just say anything. They can just be like,
right,
this guy spat on me, send him to the solitary confinement. They handed it out like fucking candy. We had a client who I think he had been in because it stacks. So if you go to solitary for spitting on a guard, let's say, they might give you a week. After a week in solitary, you are mentally fucked up. There is no person who is not affected by that. The studies and studies and studies and studies have been done about how detrimental it is. And so if while you're in solitary and you are feeling very mentally unwell, you do something else, like throw a cup at a guard, you go to another disciplinary hearing, you get 2 months now, right? Because now you have one violation already. We had a client who had been in continuous solitary for 25 years.
What?
It might have been more than that. It's shocking and really horrendous, especially knowing how well known it is. Like the effects of solitary confinement on a person, mentally, physically, all of it, but particularly mentally, are very, very well studied. They're very well known. Prisons absolutely know about it. It is not the way to get someone to stop misbehaving, because they are going to lose their fucking mind and they are going to do more stuff. And then you're going to give them more solitude. It's the worst, like most horrific cycle. And they give it out for nothing. I mean, days or weeks for petty shit.
Vitriolic, mean, just...
Because there's no one from the outside coming in, except for us, in our cases, saying, hey, we see this happening and this isn't fair.
Yeah.
And, they're the ones we're appealing to the prisons. So they're the ones who are like, well, no, we don't find this extreme amount of evidence you just laid out for me compelling that this guy didn't do it. Like, I had a case once where he had drugs planted on him. It was very clear. Like, a guard found a bag of drugs on the floor in the visitor's room, and there were multiple other inmates who did not know this inmate. They were in different blocks. They all said the same thing. The guard lined him up and said, someone's stepping forward and owning this, or I'm picking someone. And nobody stepped forward, and he picked somebody, and it was my client. And we had multiple people testify to that. Like, people, again, didn't know him, didn't even know his name. They were like, he was a kid they like described him.
Yeah.
And they said all of that at the disciplinary hearing.
But no, didn't matter.
Nope. Stuck in shoe. And then I appealed. And I think, as I recall, that appeal got denied. But anyway, back to Scandinavia.
Yeah. Okay.
A little glimmer of how things could be. So Norwegian correctional officers receive 2 years of special training before working in prisons.
Is it that hard? Is it that hard just to train people?
I mean, that's a long time. It is expensive, but maybe it's fucking worth it to treat people like human beings.
Worth it to have social skills.
Yeah,
I hate it here. Okay.
And they teach, and they do teach it. They hone communication skills. They learn de-escalation techniques, and they question the limits of their power over inmates. That's all part of the programming in Norway. They identify actually more as social workers than as prison guards. In California, by the way, guards get 16 weeks of training focused on conducting body searches, cell searches, and how to physically subdue inmates.
Of course, yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, let's teach you how to beat somebody up, not be a person.
So back to road signs.
I'm going to lose it on this one. And I know it's hot in here, but I'm so sweaty.
I am too.
So angry.
Prisoners, as I said, they make all kinds of signs, stop signs, yield signs, but the big highway signs are the most lucrative for the people employing the prisoners, obviously, not for the prisoners themselves. The top pay for workers making signs for correction enterprises is 26 cents an hour. And it's not easy work. They have to haul and cut huge sheets of aluminum. Each large highway sign takes about 12 hours to complete. The letters have to be hand-laid individually and precisely. In some locations, prisoners are bused from the prison to the facility where the signs are made, which means that every time they return to prison, every day after work, they have to go through a full strip search.
A full one?
Yep, every time.
God damn it.
And because labor is so cheap, they also tend to bring in more people than they actually need for the work. So some prisoners get stuck doing mind-numbing things just to keep them busy, like chipping paint off picnic tables. Some prisoners have expressed a sense of pride in the work that they do with the signs. And honestly, anything you can do to maintain your sanity and sense of humanity and pride in prison, fucking do it. Go for it. I'm not here to say that those people who feel that way are wrong to feel that way. I'm not here to say that prisoners shouldn't be able to work if they want to, but I don't think the places that are employing them are doing it to give folks this sense of purpose and pride, whatever their little touchy-feely mission statements may say. And
bullshit.
If what you're claiming you're doing is training them in a way that will help them get a job on the outside, you wouldn't underpay and overhire them and then just have them chip paint off picnic tables. That is not a transferable skill into the real world that's going to get anybody any fucking job. And then you're also employing a lot of people who are never going to be released, so that can't be your purpose. So what the fuck is your excuse there?
Yeah, your argument is literally full of holes, and you're an asshole and a garbage person and a liar.
I want to end this, though, with a quote from Odell Blue, who is a prison worker employed at Franklin Correctional Center, and he makes highway signs, and he's one of the people who expressed pride in his work. And he said, quote, "Making these signs lets other people know which way to go so they won't get lost," end quote. And that's a really nice sentiment, and I'm really happy that he feels that way. But while the manufacturing of these signs may keep individual Americans from getting lost, everything I just talked about makes me feel like the country as a whole has been lost from the start. And I'm frankly not sure there's a sign big enough to help us find our way. That was a little cheesy, and I debated leaving it in, but
no. Boom.
So there we go. What you can now think of every time you see a sign on the street.
Well, I'm not going to be happy about them anymore.
Yeah, you liked them and now they're ruined.
Well, I guess I was...
You were lukewarm.
I was lukewarm about them, and now I'm just going to be immediately viscerally angry. And there doesn't feel like a way out of it because...
Oh yeah, it's so baked in.
It's so baked in. And as you said from the beginning... If that was one of the first things we decided to do and have just, it's been so culturally embedded in everything we're taught and the way we talk about prisoners, it's the way we talk about crime. We just shut off that part of ourselves that exists. But there are hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people in prison right now. And they're essentially corporations, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, which is what runs this country now. We went from, a group of rebels who wanted to flee the monarchy and then built a lot could argue is a, beautiful democracy, whatever, where dreams can be made. But when did that even happen? I don't know.
Not for everyone, at least. Certainly not.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Not for everyone, which is what we said it was going to be.
And like, if you haven't understood systemic racism, like this is a big example of it. Like this is what people are talking about, and it's baked into every aspect of our society. And intentionally, the system of housing in the United States, the way we issue loans, it's designed to put non-white people at a disadvantage. And it is intentionally, like Congress has put it in like their notes about the redlining statutes. They were like, this is to keep Black people out of certain neighborhoods. They're not coy about it. The evidence for systemic racism is absolutely fucking everywhere. And if you don't see it, you don't want to see it because you're benefiting from it and you like it that way. And we all benefit from, I mean, I benefit from it. Certainly. I'm a white woman. So like,
right.
But you can't help that you're benefiting from it, but you can at least fucking acknowledge it and try to make the disparities less.
Right. At the bare minimum, acknowledge it. Because I feel like so many people are just like, boop, 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 blinders. If I don't see it, I don't have to think about it, and it's not going to bother me. Yeah, it's hard to sit with. I feel ill. It sucks. I'm having acid reflux about it, and I'm hot and I'm sweaty, and I want to crawl into a pit. And it feels hopeless because what in my mind, what's going to change all of this right now is what fucking France did. We're going to need a revolution here. And I maybe shouldn't be on the airwaves saying that. I don't know. But what's it going to take, y'all?
The first itty bitty baby step is acknowledgement. Because if people keep denying it, they're not going to be motivated to do anything about it. And it's uncomfortable to look at when you're one of the beneficiaries of the system. But it doesn't suck as badly as being one of the people oppressed by the system. So fucking put your big girl or boy or non-conforming pants on and fucking do something. Like, acknowledge it.
Look at it.
Try harder to be better about it, Try harder, be better is what Hannah says on Red Handed all the time. I don't want to rip her off, but
as Hannah says.
Yes, to quote Hannah McGuire from Red Handed, try harder, be better.
Try harder, be better. Educate yourself. Yeah, maybe that's it. Like, not full-on revolution, which I think is necessary, but just changing the way we talk about it, especially with our friends and family and strangers, and talking about it in general.
So there we go. That's what we have to say to you. Talk about it. Spread the word. And if you're going to get arrested, do it in Norway so you can take advantage of those sensitive and probably hot Norwegian guards.
They're probably
all
hot.
Scandinavians are like the elves in Lord of the Rings. It's unfair.
It's not all right.
Just ethereal, killer cheekbones, tall.
Trained in how to be a person.
Sensitivity trained. Oh, man. Pick up my next husband at a prison in Norway. I'm not looking for another husband, by the way.
I don't think anyone thought that.
Nate likes to call me his first wife all the time. So
that's my favorite, yeah. Oh, boy. Well, fuck the prison industrial complex.
Yes.
Fuck road signs.
I mean, we need them. I don't want to. Let's not go knock out. Don't go vandalizing road signs.
No.
On account of this, because they are there for safety. Ponder it. And
if you want to yell at somebody, go find the right person to yell at.
Yell at your representatives.
And yell about it, I guess. Just into the void.
Yes, as we do. Scream into the void.
Be kind to people. Fuck's sake.
If you're listening to this and you vehemently disagree with everything we've been saying, I would also encourage you to take a breath and be kind and think about why you're having that reaction and maybe what that says about your state of mind right now and where you are, and take some self-reflection before you decide to say mean shit on the internet. If you don't like something that you're scrolling past, you don't have to say that you don't like it. You can just keep going.
You can keep going with your day.
Somebody today on my Hannibal Austria video commented infantile. And I was like, yeah, I'm making fart jokes.
Maybe you need to figure out how to be more fun.
Lighten the fuck up. The comedian Pete Holmes has a quote where he's like, people who are really proud of being a tough laugh, I don't get it. Why is that a point of pride? Like, work on that. Let yourself feel a little more joy day to day. We all deserve it.
Good God.
Some of us more than others.
Some of us not at all. Just kidding. As I'm extolling the virtue of believing that all human beings deserve to be treated equally and with kindness, I'm like, well, some of them.
Well, I don't know that we ever said all human beings. I think your actions should affect how you're treated in some circumstances, but I just don't think we're always prioritizing the actions that are actually the most harmful to penalize. Right. Anyway, thank you again for listening.
Thank you. That was really informative and really coming from your perspective and like your experience and also your kind heart and brain.
No, thanks. You don't need to sit there and just be depressed about it. Like, we can do stuff. We are not powerless. We shifted public sentiment against public executions and torture. So maybe we can keep it going.
Momentum.
The problem is, though, of course, now that if imprisonment is the punishment, we don't have eyes in the prisons. And so we don't see, it's not in front of our faces and happening every day. Most of us don't have to deal with it on a regular basis or look it in the face.
Bring it into the light.
That's right. All right. We love you all.
Love you.
Eat the rude.
Yeah, eat the rude. Enjoy the rest of your day if you can, if you dare. Love you guys.